Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock. I'm not a fool.
I just think that would be fun.
Hey there, it's Tony here, and welcome to episode 54 of the Dumb Leaders podcast. And today we're talking about what dumb leaders do. And this is number 11 in our series of what dumb leaders do. And today we're talking about the blame shifter. The blame shifter. The one that always has an excuse. The one. Maybe you've worked with a leader like this. Someone that was never accepted responsibility, never accepted accountability or ownership of the issue. There was always a bit of a blame storm. It was always a look for who can I blame? What's my excuse? You know, maybe you've heard them say things like, who stuffed up this time? What did they do? Why didn't they listen to me? It wasn't my fault. Maybe you've heard this from leaders that you've worked with. Maybe you heard them say, as long as they can't blame me. You know, maybe if you've heard some of those things, you've come into contact with the legendary blame shifter. Now, you've probably heard that in the workplace. So this is the blame shifter, the leader who always blames others and never accepts responsibility and accountability for things that go wrong. It is always someone else's fault. And you know that when you're working with someone like that, it is just horrendous. It really is a painful journey because the blame shifter always finds an excuse why things haven't gone their way or why they haven't got the results that they've required. They look for excuses. And in many ways, I'm going to keep introducing you to Dean. Dean is the dumb leader. Dean, the dumb leader. And in this case, Dean is ultra disorganized. He operates around that emotive, limbic style, spur of the moment. Dean can't get his shit together. That's the bottom line. He can't get his shit together. He can't remain focused and gets distracted so easily. He's easy on his team and he wants to be friends with everyone. And as you can probably guess, because of that, Dean has a lot of issues, a lot of problems. And this is highlighted each and every year around performance appraisal time. Because at a performance appraisal time, Dean spends a lot of energy looking for the excuses as to why he hasn't done what he should have been doing. He'll throw people under the bus. He deflects conversations onto other managers who he potentially has perceived that they haven't achieved or done something far worse. The lack of support he'll often drag out from his line manager. And it's all backed by this delusional belief that they have that they're doing everything possible in their role. Everything possible. Now, there's no doubt that Dean the dumb leader is pretty busy. There's no doubt. But they're just not focused on the key result areas. And that's the difference. That is the absolute difference. And when they think about is everything possible, that they're doing everything possible, they're doing everything possible without getting organised and focused, without removing distractions, and without actually leading his team to any semblance of what a performance culture would look like. Everything Dean does is wrong, and everything Dean does is driven by Dean. That's why they need excuses. So don't be like Dean. So this is what some of the stuff that Dean trots out. It's the economy. No one's buying. Maybe you've heard that. My sales are down because no one is buying. The economy is rooted. Our product needs an upgrade is often a thing. It's always somebody else's or the product's fault, not the fact of their salesmanship or their skill. I haven't received the training that I need. Now, this is especially relevant for those people who are constantly in training, you know. I've worked with some leaders, I've coached leaders who get really frustrated because they seem to be constantly training someone like Dean the dumb leader. Because Dean keeps throwing at him, I haven't been trained, I don't know. when the reality is all that leader needs to do is be a little bit firmer, a bit more assertive and say, well, hang on, what about that session we had last Thursday where I showed you how to do X, Y, Z, whatever the case may be. So, haven't been trained. That's an excuse that gets trotted out by Dean. What about Jack? Jack over there, he's done less than me. What about the time he did this? Deflection, classic deflection from Dean the dumb leader. And you'll see that whenever you're leading a dean, you will see that aspect. They'll often trot out, I don't have enough staff, don't have enough time, you keep giving me more stuff to do. That's a classic. You keep giving me more stuff to do. Isn't that your job to do? For me to give you things. And I'm going to jest about this one, but sometimes the excuses get so ridiculous, like, it's because the sky is blue. Maybe, but a little bit of a jest. But at times when dealing with Dean, you just sit back and you wait for the excuses to roll. And you just wait, because you know that they're going to be coming. They put more effort into excuses. They put more effort into excuses than by doing the right thing, doing the thing that they need to be doing the leadership that's required to lead a high-performing team. They'll put more effort into excuses than what they do into produce the production of results. It's always everybody else's fault. It's never Dean's. Now, as a leader, if you fail to take ownership and accountability, you will always be in the realms of the also-ran. You'll always be in the domain of the deluded, and you'll always be down the lower end of the dreaded bell curve. You will always be there, the realms of the also-rans, the domain of the deluded, and the lower end of the bell curve. Results and ultimately your career will go unrealized. And if you're lucky, someone may grade you at performance appraisal time, which is another dumb thing, by the way, as solid. The amount of performance appraisal meetings that I've sat in at senior executive level and someone said, oh, they're solid performer, they're solid. Solid has got so many different connotations. So if Dean, the dumb leader, is lucky, he might be rated as solid because at least he's there. Which is one of the continuum there for the rating of solid. But the good news for Dean is that when he gets tired from living on a wing and a prayer, there are avenues for him to grow and improve. So there are avenues for him to grow and improve. And he would, here's 3 tips that Dean the dumb leader can take on board. And even if you're not Dean, please take them on board to help you become a better leader. Because this isn't about Dean, this is about you learning the lessons from Dean the dumb leader. You have to be open and aware to look for the feedback that you need. So some people might call it unfiltered feedback. I personally prefer challenging and constructive feedback. You need to be looking for the feedback that will help you improve in those areas that you're not where you need to be. And it's challenging on 2 fronts. Firstly, the receiving of feedback. That's a challenge because people will try and justify it. People get defensive over it. People will ignore it. Dumb leaders do all of those things. Often within a 30-second time span. But dumb leaders do all of those things. They'll get defensive, they'll justify, and they'll ignore. But it's also a fact that most people will not give you that feedback. They won't give you the feedback that you need. Call it unfiltered feedback, call it constructive. Some people may look at it as negative feedback, but ultimately it's feedback that you need to get to help you be better as a leader. And I recently read a report from a business guru, and for the life of me, I can't remember who it was. But they challenge people to look for, now wait for this, look for the 1 person in 10 who will give you the unfiltered feedback that you need. So 1 person in 10 to give you the unfiltered feedback you need. Now, that may be true in most organisations, and I'm not going to dispute that, because my observations and my experience would indicate that's pretty accurate. But there is a different perspective that other organisations and other coaches and leaders have. David Rock, for example, from the Neuro Leadership Institute, tells us that if you want to create a feedback and a performance culture, you can only do that when people are actively seeking out feedback. So when you're in a when you're in a environment where people are actually looking for feedback, asking for feedback, seeking feedback, that helps organizations and people drive and build that feedback and performance culture that we're talking about. But seriously, it's how you seek feedback that makes the biggest difference. So it's not just, how do you think I'm going sort of question. That's a really general question. And most people say, yeah, you're going okay. Yeah, going well, mate. Good stuff. It's you, in many ways, it's about you being courageous enough to step into the feedback realm and to seek feedback and lead the discussion around the specifics that it is that you want to get some feedback on. So if you say, my world's retail, my background is retail, I know retail very, very well. So if you had some misgivings, for example, on how you just served a customer, or the sale process, or your approach to the customer, and you thought, I'm not quite sure about that, I'm not quite convinced, and you went to someone and said, how do you think I'm good? Do you think I'm good at service? The answer that you'll probably get is from the person is, yeah, you're pretty good. But that gives you nothing. So much better off to seek some specifics. I'm really trying to improve my customer service. I'm quite unsure that my approach with that last customer really worked. Can I get you to observe me serve a number of customers and give me some really specific feedback around what you saw with the approach and the welcome? All of a sudden, you're going to get some really specific feedback. And maybe you won't. Maybe the person will, you're pretty good. You did well. But you have a greater chance of getting the feedback you need when you're more specific. So don't be general, be courageous, lead the discussion, and look for those specifics. So that's step one, look for feedback. Step number 2 is follow the clues of success, okay? Follow the clues of success. And part of this is about looking for a mentor within the organization. Someone that can guide, someone that can give you the feedback, etc., someone that can guide. But even if a mentor isn't necessarily available, and I know that in some organisation it's hard to choose a mentor, and that's probably a bit of an indictment in itself. It gives you an understanding of the performance environment that exists. But some organisation, it's really genuinely tough to find a mentor. So the next best thing is to observe and challenge yourself to see the things that someone who is more successful than you are doing. So someone that's more successful than you, observe and challenge yourself to be objective in what it is that they're doing, not subjective. And the big difference here is that often we'll look at someone who's winning, or leading the way in performance, and we'll justify that to ourselves by saying they're a brown noser, someone's playing favourites, and we blind ourselves to some of the things that they are actually doing that is creating success for them. Okay, so we blind ourselves to that by using a subjective approach. So I want you to use an objective approach, because too often we just make those excuses that make ourselves feel good but ultimately aren't doing us any good, because they're still winning and you're still not where you should be. So looking at things on how they organise their day, for example, Good start. What are they prioritizing, and how do they deliver those priorities? So looking at that and getting away from the labels of brown noser, favourite, suck up, whatever it is that you use, look at the facts of what it is that they're doing and being really objective. Because they're doing something that you're not. That's the key. They're doing something that you're not. They may be connecting with their leader above them in a way that gives that leader more reassurance and confidence around what it is that they do than what it is that you're doing. So this is about being really objective, and it's about understanding that from your perspective. What can you implement? What can you learn? But again, it's about being aware of that and wanting to do that. And step number 3 is I want you to think about, I actually want you to implement the practice of above-the-line leadership. And above-the-line leadership is a really simple, age-old concept. And it's one that's been around for a while. A wise old man once taught it to me, and it's been something that has always been relevant. But practice above-the-line leadership. So when leaders operate above the line or when leaders operate below the line, there is a vast difference in what it is that they do. So when a leader operates below the line, they're living in this world of blame, excuses, and denial. So they're refusing to accept their role in their performance delivery. They're blaming others, they're making excuses, they're denying the problem. But when a leader operates above the line, and if you go to dumbleaders.com, you'll see the blog post in relation to what dumb leaders do, number 11. Click on it. There's a visual of this particular above the line leadership, which I would encourage you to save and keep for yourself and put it in your desk, because it's a really good, valid learning, and it's one that will live with you if you haven't heard it before, one that will live with you as long as you implement it. So when a leader operates above the line, those leaders operate with ownership, accountability, and responsibility. Completely different world. They have a problem, they'll own the problem. They'll accept the responsibility for it, and they'll be accountable for the results. So it's a completely different world to those that lead below the line. And ultimately, that sometimes is the difference. That will often be the difference of what's happening for you in your career. If you're living in below the line, if you're leading as a below the line leader, the reality is that you are, as I said, you're in the domain of the dumb. Because it's about the acceptance of accountability, responsibility, and ownership, and that's the only way that effective leaders can lead moving forward. Remember, being a dumb leader is a choice. It's an absolute choice that we make, but so is becoming a better leader. It's a choice. So what can you do today? Starting today, what can you do to become a better leader? Hey, thanks for listening to the Dumb Leaders podcast. I hope that there was some real value there for you today. If you think there is someone in your group, in your network, that would appreciate and learn from this particular podcast, please share. Give us a review on iTunes. All of these things help us get found. We are providing a library of lessons from lousy leaders to help you become a better leader. Until next week, I'll see ya.
Don't mock. I'm not a fool. Don't mock.